Welcome back to Med Audio. We are today with Mr. Jermo Köhnke. Yeah. I say it right? Köhnke. Yeah, okay. That is the product manager of Sennheiser.
Yeah, for Audiophile.
For Audiophile, because now we will explain you what's happened to Sennheiser and Sonova. So thank you for joining me today. It's a great pleasure to have you here with me at the High End Show 2022. So let's start just to speak about you. How did you join Sennheiser team? Since how much years? And what was your first project?
Oh yeah. So it's should I take it? Yeah. Okay. So it's actually quite a long time back. So I joined Sennheiser back in 2014, and it came to be because I was in a technical high school, and our teacher said to us, "Well, you all got to become engineers because that's the only thing German companies got going for them, having great engineering." And so I basically applied to a lot of companies where you can also study next to working, and it was like 90% automotive companies, but Sennheiser caught my eye. They were also the fastest, but was also the product I felt the most about. So they accepted me as well, which was really cool. It was like 80 applicants, so a bit competitive. And once it was clear that I would go to Sennheiser, I really went in depth there and kind of studied, okay, what kind of products does Sennheiser make? What does excite me? Where is Sennheiser strong? And it was pretty quickly clear that we are the strongest at audiophile headphones, so really the best sound quality that you can get. And I really started to, of course, become an audiophile myself, but also admire the engineers behind it, like Axel Grell. And I really, really wanted to work for him. And when I basically was close to finishing my studies, I had a bit of a stroke of luck, and I became basically his intern. And we both liked each other very much, and he became the examiner of my bachelor thesis. And that was basically the way I started then in 2018 with the department. And yeah, then basically after a lot has happened, and since 2020 I'm then responsible for the audiophile portfolio, and I did in 2019 a few Bluetooth projects like the HD450 BT, for example. It was quite a lot in a short time, but the first audiophile project was the HD560S, and that is very close to my heart because it was really something where I developed it myself. So normally, as a product manager, you tell the development team that is what the customers like, and let's try to meet their needs the best we can. And for the HD560S, I actually sat at home and thought, well, we are the standard for neutral sound with the HD600, but if you're just starting out at the hobby and you don't want to spend like 400 euros on a headphone and then 200 on an amplifier, then Sennheiser isn't really the best way to start. And so I thought, well, actually we have everything we need to be really strong in that area. And so I started building just at home and tinkering and soldering some transducers. And at some point I had something where I thought, okay, this is actually really, really cool. And I showed it around, and we got approval to kick off a project. It was a really, really cool project because it was extremely fast. It was really, really energetic. And then within 2020, we launched the HD560S, and it became an instant success. So that was really, really amazing.
So before to move on with, let's say, more the products area, let's speak about Sennheiser today. We know that the consumer brand is now part of Sonova. Is correct say like that? Or maybe you can explain a little better what's happened and what will change from customer point of view, because at the end, that's the important parts.
So what has happened, or just generally how Sennheiser works, it is that you had basically two large divisions, and one of it was consumer headphones, and the other one was professional equipment, so microphones and wireless systems and business communication stuff. And what had already happened is that we saw that all the divisions had very different requirements to business. So if you want to build a microphone for stage use, it's something very different from building a wireless device, of course. And so we already saw over the last years that that really the requirements that we have are just, our way of working is so different that we actually developed into two little companies within the one company, basically. And at some point, it was seen that to be successful in the consumer market, you need a lot of money power behind it, basically, to establish more branding, to succeed against the really large brands in the market, which are really powerful. And so and so the decision was made. Okay, let's find a new home for consumer headphones, and that is basically where our business division is now in the under Sonova. And Sonova is a Swiss company. They are coming from hearing aids. And for them, it is a very, very important strategic move that they see, of course, that the hearing aid market is really a cool market, and they are market leaders there. But now they have to say, okay, where can we extend logically that still fits with what they want to do. And what they want to do is they want to bring the delight of hearing to a lot of people. So it still fits a lot to actually have a brand that really focuses on sound quality. Okay. So it was a really, really good match in the end. And yeah, that is how it's now. So the Sennheiser company, the old professional Sennheiser, that is now only professional stuff. But it's still headphones like the HG25, for example, because it's mostly bought by professional users. And on the other hand, we have the consumer Sennheiser, or the consumer Sennheiser branded Sonova company, which now builds all the Bluetooth headphones and Audiophile also.
So next questions will be about feedback from the customer feedback, and if it's important for Sennheiser. Did you hear for the feedback? From where did you hear it? Because I know that some brands actually are inside Facebook or stuff like that to read the customer feedback. How you do it?
Yeah. Really good question, and I'll speak for Audiophile now, because of course every product manager has a bit of a different way of working, and that is really the luxurious part about audiophiles, because if you ask a normal person what do you like in a headphone, they say, well, it kind of sounds good, I guess, and you don't get very in-depth feedback, so you have to be really smart about how do you ask your questions and how do you actually get that next step in terms of product quality. And if you ask an audiophile, what do you want to improve in that headphone, you get like a five-page essay on what they would like to improve, even though they already love their product. So
everybody has different tastes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everybody is hearing different.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just so much width basically where you can get opinions from.
How you
So.
manage this everything?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I try to personally be really in all major forums as far as I can read it. So there's also a lot of feedback from Chinese and Japanese customers, and I can't read that. It's a bit unfortunate, but I get a lot of feedback then from our local team. So there we have really, really passionate people that are themselves also audiophiles. That's also always really important, that they really are also at the localities, in the stores there, and they talk with the people, and they just buy the products themselves because they just feel the customer themselves. But I try to be really in every major online forum and try to really understand the different customer groups, how they think. So each forum has its own mentality. So you like HeadFi is different from Reddit, which is different from YouTube, which is different from Twitter. It's very, very diverse, but it's all have their different strengths and weaknesses in a sense. And yeah, I try to just really be up to date all the time, and also it's really great to have people in the team, of course, that feel the same, and everyone has a different pair of glasses. So if I read a review, I try to, of course, have it as broad as possible, but I mostly look at the sound, of course. I'm also a bit partial to acoustic engineering, and if my mechanical engineer then reads a review and he finds a detail about the person doesn't like the connector, for example, for some reason, then he'll just focus on that point, and of course that will be his strong argumentation then in the next project or something. But it is really important to. I think you can't just do a survey and ask like 10 people or 100 about like 5 bullet points. Do you want us to improve sound or mechanical or whatever? But for audiophile in particular, it's so important to get down into the details, to get down into the rabbit holes. And it's not always crazy scientific. It is a lot of just impressions that you get and filtering out, okay, what seems to be the general trend, where are customers going, what do they like, how are products aging. That's super interesting for audiophiles. So for normal consumer products, they are just developed, and then after 3 years, Bluetooth technology is much better. And so the product just dies and you get the next product, basically. And for audiophile, you have products that live for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years. And it's really interesting to see basically how our products appreciated over a certain period of time. So, for example, 20 years ago, very few people would have said that the HG650 doesn't have enough bass, for example. And now that's kind of the little thing that people criticize about the HG600, even though it's still overall the most neutrally tuned headphone in the world, and everyone says, okay, you should have it. It's a standard. You need to have it. But the tastes in music have shifted a little bit. There's a lot more like products out there, so hi-fi has become much larger in terms of just high quality headphones, which is great. And yeah, so that's very interesting to just go into. Yeah, but that's generally it. Really, we try to be as close to the customer, have a lot of natural conversations, and learn through that. And of course, we also do surveys, and we also do a lot of in-depth user research, qualitative and quantitative, and so on. But nothing replaces really just sitting down and reading what the people write, or just talking with them and really feeling, okay, what do they feel passionate about? Because that doesn't always translate into writing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Actually, in the end, make everybody happy is probably impossible.
That's,
but
yeah.
Listening for customer feedback is very important.
Yeah, exactly. There's a really good saying in product management, and that is you can make some of the people happy some of the time. And I mean, you have to realize it and say, okay, I want to achieve this one thing with a product now.
When you develop a new products, on what are your priority? And I know it's hard questions, but maybe you are trying to focus on an aspects more than other one.
It's hard to say because we always try to achieve different things with every product. So what would be my nightmare would be to build a product which is just like another product, just a little bit better or a little bit worse. I want every product to have its own identity, its own target group, and it's so important that I don't say, okay, if you have a HG560S, then your logically next step is the HG600, and then the logical next step is the HD800S, because they are all very different headphones, and it's not necessary that you like the more expensive one much better.
Because people think like that you start from entry level,
yeah.
Then you go higher and should be always better.
Yeah.
You are saying that it's not like that now.
So well, of course, our more expensive headphones are better in really verifiable and measurable ways, like openness. The HD800 is the most open headphone in the world, and that already translates in much better sound quality. So that is something where we say, okay, the HD800 is just flat out the best dynamic headphone in the world. But nonetheless, your taste in music or your preference for music may not translate that you love the HD800. That's completely fair. And so I try to carve out a different identity for every single product. Basically, then the priority would be that you have that one, let's say, identity of the product, that the entire concept comes together really nice. So the i900 is a really good example of that, because it is a very, let's say, a very clean and extremely analytic sound. It's very... you get just all the details. It feels really finely machined, and the cool thing is it translates also into the acoustic components, which are also finely machined, actually. So you kind of listen the craftsmanship, or you hear the craftsmanship inside, and then beyond that, the design that also translates this craftsmanship and the milling and the precision, which is also translated in the sound. So it's really one product which has an identity which you can see at every part of it. So whether you measure it, whether you listen to it, whether you look inside, or whether you see the design, it's all one language. And that translates also to, I think, why a lot of people love it, because a lot of people really have this propensity for having something so finely machined. They appreciate all the details. And yeah, I think that was a really great result.
Okay, I don't have so much Sennheiser headphones at home, but from the Sennheiser headphones that I tested, I got this feeling that the sound is natural and more on the analytics. So we can say that this is the sound signature of Sennheiser, or that is looking for. I mean, you will never get this boomy bass that it's more pronounced than, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. You're definitely right. So we are really on the. If you ask people what can Sennheiser do well, then they probably have neutral sound in mind. They have natural sound in mind, and then when it comes to the HD800 or the i900, well, they will say it's very analytic, very detailed sound. So I think those would be the most most fitting. Characteristics for us, but it's mostly, let's say, a historical thing. So that these are our high-running products. That is the products we are known for, but we still try to to at least have something for every broad preference. And in the past, we didn't have it that much, so we are working on that, but it's not like everything has to be analytical. That's not our style, so we, in general, want to be very neutral. That's our... It should be as natural as humanly possible, or as much as we can do it as engineers. And beyond that, there is some variation for taste. Everyone hears differently, and some people prefer some more analytic sound, and some people prefer bassier sound and warmer sound. That's absolutely fine. And down the line, we'll try to have something for everyone. Yeah. Well, not for everyone, but for 99%.
So we have today on the market, I think, a lot of choice, because it's full of brands and headphones type. But there is one technology in particular that we are seeing, I think, from last years, that is the planar magnetic technology. And if I'm not wrong, Sennheiser didn't have still one. What do you think about this technology?
Very cool question. So first, it's really right that there's a lot more competition now than there was 10 years ago, and I'm really glad about it, because it's a fantastic hobby, and if more people get into it, both manufacturers and customers, then it's a great sign that we are on something that is really valuable. So I think it's not just about, okay, we sell you a headphone and that's it. It's really about that people find time to listen to music and to recharge, and to really find time for themselves, which a lot of people just don't find time for. So they never really make that little spot in their day where they just sit down and can wind down. That's I think it's super essential to do that. And if good music is one motivation to do that, then I think we can help a lot of people. And you can do that also with a 100 or 200 euro headphone, if the sound quality is really good. And those products exist as well. So I'm really in love with all the choice we have now on the market. And now specifically to the technology, so I think what has driven a lot of, especially smaller brands, so we as Sennheiser in a very luxurious position, I think, as market leader in audiophile. And our strength is really the building of really extremely high quality sound, but which is accessible. For example, the HG560S is fairly accessible in terms of price, but in a lot of metrics, it's kind of the best you can get. So it has some sort of space. It is very neutral. It has a very good impulse response. So what that means is that once the transducer is in motion, it will stop very, very fast. So the mechanical dampening is extremely strong. So it's in many ways a really, really good headphone, and that is where Sennheiser excels, actually, that we have this automated transducer manufacturing line, and they build the best transducers in the world. And because it's completely automated, we can still build it into more affordable headphones. And I think that's just a great strength to have. I think that's great to just share it with as many people as possible. And but it's really, really hard to get there. So first you need the initial investment. You need to spend 10 million euros or something on an automatic assembly line. You have to develop it. You have to have all the knowledge in transducer technology and assembly technology and automatic assembly. So that's very, very, very niche knowledge. So there's just so much investment that goes into it. And if you want to build a planar magnetic transducer, for example, it's actually fairly simple if you just want to do the basic thing. So there's actually tutorials on YouTube where people do it basically in their kitchen. And it's really interesting to see, and the result isn't even bad. But it's, of course, a far step from actual serial production. But if you're a small company that wants to start with building good headphones, then probably you want to do your own transducer, then you'll probably always use this planar magnetic technology. And
sound quality point of view.
And from that point of view, so we have our thinking is that in the end we want innovation that is attractive. And for me, I mean, actually the HG1 is a very good example of what is kind of the opposite of our normal modus operandi. So there we have a technology that is not scalable at all. So even if we wanted to build more, and we just didn't care about profit or something, we couldn't. It's just extremely limited in terms of what can be manufactured, and that's the end of the story. And to me, of course, innovation should always be scalable, and you should always have in the end, a trickle down and have really something that can reach the masses. And we think that at least for small transducers, so you have planar magnetic transducers that are larger and that are smaller, And we see for smaller transducers, our own transducers are the best in the market. That is our strong conviction. And for larger transducers, we think for the HD800 we have built an extremely powerful large transducer that is probably, and that is also renowned for being one of the most detailed headphones in the world. So there's some proof point for it that it is quite capable. And then the question is, okay, where's the room for the planar dynamic technology there? So we have looked very deeply into every transducer technology, and we really researched 10 years on it. So we are super detailed on, okay, what does each technology bring of an advantage? And there's such a thorough research that goes into it. So really people spending a decade on researching it and just getting every theoretical foundation right. And then we sit there and look into it and say, okay, how can we apply it the best? Or do we apply it? In the end, we think that for Sennheiser, what our strength is, that planar magnetic technology at the moment is not the best fit, but overall we find we are really sound nerds, so we always evaluate and re-evaluate because technology evolves. And it's the same with small transducers. People, for example, always ask us, well, you always use your dynamic headphone transducer, why don't you change to balanced armature or something? And the reason is we evaluated it 20 years ago, and back then we found out, okay, dynamic is better. We evaluated 5 years ago, and it's still the best transducer in the world for small in-ears. And it's really a continuous process, but we are always really at the edge of what's possible. And we think really our sound technology is really audibly the most natural that you can get, and also measurably in many ways. So again, the 7mm transducer, it's always something that I feel, if you just read it, it doesn't sound so exciting as having like a multi-driver setup or something. But as soon as it gets to listening and measuring it, then you see, okay, it's actually top of the line. It has basically no distortion at all. The manufacturing consistency is incredible. So, and that's the proof point for me also that even though dynamic transducers aren't the most exotic in the world, for one reason or another, they're still probably the best you can apply in most fields.
Directly bring me to next question that is something controversial that actually we have in audiophile world, that is measures versus sound quality. There is any correlation between them? And of course measures matters because are important, but for consumer point of view, in the end, I take also some measures at home, small things, just to try to figure out or understand if you can understand something from the measures, but it's not so easy.
It's a really cool question also, basically, the eternal struggle of audiophiles, basically, how much you should look into measurements, and some people will just do all day nothing else and look at measurements, and there's also some companies that just say, okay, as soon as we hit the target curve, then we've reached our goal. And there's and we at Sennheiser are really clear. We are always judging by our ears. There's no exception. And if something has a nice target curve, but we don't feel that it sounds really good, then we say it's not a good audiophile headphone. So that's our very clear stance. And of course, there's a lot of information in frequency response measurements, for example. So I think you can corroborate of like 60 or 70% of your listening experience with the frequency response graph. But there's so much that you can't see. And the important part is the remaining 30% are actually why you buy the headphone usually. So you can always equalize the frequency response afterwards if you are so inclined, and it doesn't cost you a cent. But you cannot equalize soundstage, you cannot equalize openness, you cannot equalize detail. So you cannot equalize slam of the bass so that it's really fun. So and these are all the reasons why you spend a lot of money for a headphone. So I think it's really interesting how highly the frequency response chart is rated by all the audiophiles, or not all but by some groups of enthusiasts, especially in regards to high-end headphones. So it's always interesting to see, okay, how does it correlate to my listening experience? But the reason you buy the headphone is never in the frequency response. So a very cool person once said, by frequency response alone, you cannot determine whether something is a 50 or a 2,000 euro headphone, and that's absolutely correct.
Actually, one time I took a headphone and I said, okay, let's try to make it flat. It would sound terrible.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other time I was trying to equalize also another headphones to try to make it sounds better, but in the end what was better was the original without echo. So was
Yeah, but it's cool that you find that out and that you experiment.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
what Audiophile is about, that you are really just trying to learn,
Yes.
that you try to see what do you like. And so it's a really interesting process, and you should absolutely play with equalization if you want, because that is a process to learn so much about.
Yes. If you don't try, you will never know.
Yeah, exactly.
There was another technology that I saw in some amplifier that was the CrossFit. Now you speak about analog one. I tested one analog one, actually the 800S that I reviewed also, and it's just open to me a world. It's crazy way. And some people start to tell me, we don't want to simulate hi-fi, but it's nothing regarding simulate hi-fi. It's just about giving a better experience, a more natural experience. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that we have CrossFit in the HE1, and that's kind of the answer. So we think if it makes the sound experience more, or the listening experience more natural, then it's absolutely the right way to go. And and CrossFit is not the newest or most exotic technology, but I think for headphones it's still, for many people, it's still a crazy good improvement. And there's no reason that in the future you shouldn't have even more elaborate digital forms of improving the the naturality of the sound. So yeah, I'm very positive on that side of technology.
It's true that the Sennheiser HD 800S was first designed for professional users.
It is true that it was built for users that want the best sound. It's so no, but the design goal was to make the most open headphones in the world. So that is something that makes Sennheiser very special and stand out. That there's not just the understanding of a frequency response and having a nice driver or something, but also that that openness by itself is a huge added value. And it's not just for comfort, that it feels more open and airy, and that you don't have anything touching your ear, which will always have psychoacoustic effects that you don't want. It will always feel closed in. So it is a very open, spacious headphone. But actually, the fact that the air that dampens the driver in front of it, so the air in front of the driver has always a certain weight to it, actually. So if you calculate a driver's weight, you don't only calculate the coil and the diaphragm, but also the air in front of it. Okay. And the more open the headphone is, the more the air basically has space to escape.
Okay. You mean the space between the driver and the...
No, I mean which we call the baffle, or Schallwand in German. So the stainless steel stuff in the HD800, for example, that is a very, very clearly defined acoustic mesh that only lets through a very clearly defined amount of air. So it can't be too much and it can't be too little. If too much air gets out, then you lose all the bass pressure, and then it's very bright. And if too little gets out, then it becomes very, very warm and mushy, and it's not nice anymore. So it needs to be perfectly right, and that's really, really hard by itself. But if you have it very open then, and you have found this really perfect balance, then there's the air doesn't dampen the driver as much, and it can move much more freely. And that is one of those misconceptions that people just look at the driver and say, okay, the dynamic driver is a coil, so it is heavier, and the other driver has no coil, so it's lighter. But maybe the driver with no coil still has a lot of air that it has to push, and so it's actually still heavier. And that makes the HD800 special in the end. So we achieved the target of the most open headphone in the world, and one of the results is it's very spacious. And another result is that it's still regarded as one of the most detailed headphones in the world. It's really, I think, super impressive, and it's a big... I'm always really amazed by the engineers that came before me at Sennheiser, basically, that they built headphones like the HD600, the old Orpheus, the HD800, that were really just nailing a certain concept, whether it's neutral sound, whether it's this openness. Even though the industry has exploded and we have so much more competition, the HD800 is still one of the most regarded headphones, if not the most regarded hi-fi headphone. So it's amazing what they have achieved, and I'm also still very much in love with my HD800S.
And let's do our last questions, then we'll let you. Do you think there is still work that can be done with the dynamic drivers? And if you want to speak a little bit about the future maybe of Sennheiser?
Yeah, so if there wasn't any more work to be done, then I wouldn't be working here. It's it's fairly simple. No, I really think there's a lot of work to be done, actually. So as I said, the headphones that have been built 30 years ago are still really, really good, but I still think that we have learned some things. Technology has evolved a little bit, and so I absolutely think, and people have changed. So people listen to electronic music now, and suddenly they have different preferences. So I absolutely think there's actually also in terms of quality so much more to do so that you achieve more openness, that you achieve maybe larger drivers or a better angle. So just improving on the physical side of things is one thing, and there's just so much more potential. So I think we are not close to the limit yet. And on the other hand, of course, as you already said with crossfit, the other part of really digital enhancement of sound hasn't even been touched yet. So I think there's just so much more to do, and I think we are kind of at the start of something and not at the end. And then the next part is also that audiophiles aren't just people that just buy headphones and that's it. There are also people that that want to talk to each other, they want to learn, and so this interaction is so important, and that is also something that is I think can evolve so much more. So it's I think such a unique experience that you if you get into audiophile, you kind of ask people, okay, what headphone do you recommend for me? And then the people in the forum tell you 10 different things, and then you decide really, either you don't decide at all, or you decide for one, and then you buy it, and then you listen to it, and then you have maybe one experience or another, and then you post it back to the forum and said, well, guess what I got? Did I do good? And then 9 people tell you, no, it's bad. But usually you get a very positive response, and people really love to hear your impressions and love to hear how you feel about it. And it's so different from every other thing you buy. So it's not just about the purchase. It's so much about the social element of it, and I think that also can be improved. And it's for me, it's never just selling a headphone. It's always also just the experience that people have, and there's so much more to do in the future, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
From and audio is everything. Have a good music, enjoy it, and with headphones, of course. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.